Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are well and good at your place. So, as you all know, we were doing hearts and hands in our online as well as we started the story in our offline classes. So, hearts and hands, it's written by O. Henry. O. Henry is the pen name of Sydney Porter. The story was published in 1902 and somehow it relates to the life of O. Henry, because the story which we will read here, which we will come to know here, that's somewhere related to O. Henry's life. Through this story, the writer wants to tell us that every time whatever we see is not always true. Whatever we see through our eyes, it's not always true. Sometimes someone who is very well dressed and we take that person as a very kind and well sophisticated person, but that's not true. And sometimes a person who is very shabbily dressed, we think that the person is kind of, means the thing which we try to think that the person is not like, he doesn't match up to our standard, but it's not like that. Sometimes our looks can be deceptive. So through this story, Hearts and Hands, the writer wants to convey the message that whatever you always see is not true. So the story starts at Denver. Denver, it is a place where the story starts and the whole scene, the whole story takes place in a train compartment. And the name of the train is B&M passenger train. Okay, so the story starts at Denver in a train compartment where the compartment was full and it was rush hour, peak hours, it was crowded. So in the compartment there was a well sophisticated lady who was sitting with all the luxuries of a traveler, and the luxuries clearly showed that the lady was well acquainted with traveling. And after some time, two new passengers, they entered the compartment. They entered the compartment, but there was no seats at all. So they saw a vacant seat which was in front of the lady. So they just took that seat. Suddenly the lady realized that the person who was sitting in front of him was her childhood friend. And the name of the person was Mr. Easton. And the name of the lady was Miss Fairchild. So Miss Fairchild, she started the conversation by saying that you did not recognize me, I am your childhood friend. And Mr. Easton, as he was handcuffed with his marshal. Why he was handcuffed with his marshal? Because he was sentenced for 7 years of imprisonment for confinement. Yes. And that is the reason why his marshal was taking him to Leavenworth prison. So when Mr. Easton saw his childhood friend, he was feeling a bit ashamed actually. And this is very true that if you are handcuffed and you are going somewhere like this and suddenly you supposed to meet your childhood friend, don't you feel uneasy? We do feel that. So in the same situation, Mr. Easton was in the same situation. So at this point of time, his marshal, he came to his rescue. He represented himself as the criminal, and he said that yes, I am the criminal and I have been sentenced for 7 years of imprisonment at Leavenworth prison, and he is my marshal. His duty is to take me to the prison. And as you all know that whenever a marshal takes his prisoner to the prison, he always tries to handcuff. Means both of their hands are handcuffed together. Do you know what is a handcuff? Handcuff, it is a metal ring actually which is used to lock the wrist of a prisoner. Okay, that is called handcuff. So both were handcuffed. So Mr. Easton was feeling very uneasy because when Miss Fairchild, she started talking to him, and when she saw that his hand was handcuffed, she felt uneasy. The color of her face changed suddenly, but the marshal rescued his criminal. So, after some time, the marshal, he thought that it's not very easy, or it's not very well to sit here and continue with the conversation, because Miss Fairchild would soon find out that who the real criminal is. So suddenly the marshal, he says to Mr. Easton that he had not smoked for a long time, so he needs to go to the smoker and have a pipe. And as soon as he says this, Mr. Easton says that okay, fine, we will go to the smoker, and they both leave. But after they leave, the passengers who were sitting in the train, in that compartment, they found out that who the real criminal was. And do you know how did they find it out? They find it out by the body language of both the persons. They find it out how the marshal and Mr. Easton were speaking, and the most important thing, that they found out by the way they were handcuffed to each other. So this is a very simple short story which has showed a simple part of O. Henry's life. Actually, the story is related to somewhere with his life, because he himself was imprisoned for 5 years for such kind of deed. But he was released shortly after that because his wife was not well. So just to be with his wife, he was released shortly. And after he was released from the prison, this story was published. So somewhere it relates to his life. This is the short simple story which tells us, actually, which tries to show us that whatever we see through our eyes is actually not always true. Sometimes our looks can be deceptive. Thank you, all of you.